first album and the second album have really different styles. So what changed between album 1 and album 2? I mean, album 1 seems more synth-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Album 2 may be more, you're still in the same category, but a little more maybe rock-oriented than the first album. But so tell me about the style of the first album and then what changed when you made album 2.
Well, like I said, the way that we think, the way I would describe our band is that it is a rock and roll band that uses a lot of dance influences, like dance beats, electronic stuff. But we're a rock band first, And so that's the first album came from that. And I think music that we make in the future will always come from that kind of idea. With the second album, we were like, the second album's tricky for a band because it's like, do you reinvent yourself or do you stick with what you know? And we were like, what if we just did both? So we came up with these 11 songs that we wanted to put on the album, and then we recorded them in 2 completely different ways. And one is like a complete experiment. We were like, let's try this crazy new thing where we record the way bands normally do, which is like we go in the studio with a producer and record it. And then the other way is we're going to do it the way that we usually do, which is much more like how DJs make electronic music. You put everything in the computer, it's all like shuffled and remixed and manipulated, and that's the finished product. So we called the album The Sun and the Moon, and it took a while the first side came out a lot earlier than the second side, but eventually we got it all together. And so now they're both out.
So the album is complete.
The album is complete, yeah.
So talking about British bands, I think, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, there probably isn't any rock band in the world that hasn't been influenced by the Beatles. So what influence does the Beatles have the Beatles have on the Bravery? Or in any of
What
you
the Super
individually?
Beatles?
Well, for me, the Beatles are sort of the be-all, end-all of everything. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't listen to either John Lennon or the Beatles. Personally, if it wasn't for the Beatles, I don't know that I would necessarily got into music.
The Beatles are weird because they were, at the same time, the most successful band and the best band, like artistically. So it's weird, I don't know that has happened since or could happen since then.
The reality is, any band that I've liked afterwards has some sort of influence that's noticeable from the Beatles. And I always kind of, even when I write my own stuff, I always kind of think, like, would they like this? Because some of the guys we always talk about them, and they, the more drinks we have, the more we argue about it, and then these two really get heated and we step out of it. But for me, I've never heard a song that they'd done, even Ringo's, that I didn't really like in some way. So yeah, I kind of keep them in mind all the time.
I'll say, as big of a fan as I am, they do have some songs I hate. So I don't listen to them with just ears as a Beatles fan. Some people will like anything, but God, Eleanor Rigby, I cannot understand.
It's so weird. It's such a great song.
This is where you're going to start. It's going to get worse from here.
I think for me, the most interesting thing about the Beatles is, their progression from a live band to a studio band. And I'm probably influenced more by their ideas in production and recording than their early songwriting or just the songwriting themselves. They were so far ahead of their time once they really started to use the studio itself as an instrument. And I think that's, a little bit of stuff that we do. We really try to use the process of recording in our songwriting and kind of exploit that to the full extent that you can.
Any arguments about them? What is the best Beatles song? I guess you probably don't like You Know My Name without me.
All right, what's the best Beatles album?
White Album.
White Album.
White Album.
Happiness is a Warm Gun is probably my number one.
It's right
See,
up
I'm
there.
in the Sergeant Pepper.
Although Revolver.
Help. We were listening to a cassette tape in the car a few weeks ago, and it was just amazing to hear how much better it sounded on
It sounded
cassette
warmer.
than MP3s. And
Yeah.
it was just literally, it was a 3-hour drive and just kept it on repeat, the tape. So,
It's just nice being forced to listen to the entire album.
yeah.
You know, and you realize there's like
Exciting.
one song that you haven't heard nearly as many times as the others because you skip it to get to the next one that's slightly better.
Yeah, we were talking about that, how tapes, you actually listen to the full albums when you had a tape, you know, side A to side B, you know, whereas an iPod, it's so quick, you know, your attention, I could easily go to the next album or something, whereas in a tape, you're driving, to get that other album, you have to get that other album. So, you run the risk of running off the road.
My tape player in my car played all my tapes fast. So for like 2 years, like when the Strokes first came out, I thought it was like
Speed metal.
I thought
That's
he had a
why
higher
you play
voice.
the bass the way you do.